Our next panel discussion focuses on the benefits that mega infrastructure projects can bring to local communities and the economy, and it's in partnership with Skanska. Given our expert panel, we can look forward to some local examples and an in-depth discussion around how clients, contractors and partners can realise the benefits major infrastructure projects bring to local economies, communities and underrepresented groups. So I'm delighted to say that joining me for this discussion we have Alice Jennison, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Skanska, Charlotte Blach, Head of Supply at Network Rail, Chris Fletcher, Director of Policy and Communications at the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and Liz Holford, Sustainability Strategy Manager, also at Network Rail. This, of course, is your chance to have your voice heard using our Slido feature to ask questions of the panel. So do feel free to make the most of this opportunity. And if my panelists would like to join me, that'd be fantastic. Wondered where you were. Come on. You've got named seats, if that's all right, just so we know where we are with the microphones. Brilliant, lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for being with us today. Alice, can we start off with you and talk about the beneficiaries of social value?
Yeah, this is something I think we all have quite different perspectives of, but we have a very similar stance that the beneficiaries of social value can be obviously our communities, who we talk about lots and we'll explore more, but also local businesses and SMEs, which we've discussed a little bit today. Also local people who are in deprived neighbourhoods or people who are unemployed as well. And social value does extend to the environment agenda too, around decarbonisation and biodiversity too.
So it really is all-encompassing, isn't it, for you?
It really is, yeah. It's the positive legacy that any infrastructure project leaves behind, and that positive legacy can extend to anyone who's close to those works and also within the supply chain, maybe further away from the works as well.
Do you have any examples, Alice, that you can share with us of something that's maybe created a lasting legacy?
Yeah, for sure. So I work on the High Speed 2 project in London, and we work very closely with Camden, and homelessness is a huge issue in the Camden area. And what we've been doing is rethinking the space that we've created through demolishing buildings in Euston and along the route. And we've hosted an initiative called Buses for Homelessness, which takes people off the streets, brings them into a 12-week training and employment program. And since then, we've actually employed 9 of those homeless people onto the project too. And before coming here, I was doing some research about how that example could be extended into the north too. And I know that homelessness in Leeds in 2020, I think over 10,000 people were diverted from becoming homeless. So there's a real risk there for people, and that's a kind of model and example that Skanska could bring up to the north to apply where it's needed most up here too.
Gosh, that's a really strong and positive example, actually. Charlotte, how do you at Network Rail and your supply chain positively manage impacts on people and maximise the net social value that you create?
I'm very, very fortunate that in Northwest and Central I have a very engaged supply chain. So a lot of the work I do in collaboration with the supply chain so that we make sure that we hit all the agenda markers of levelling up, building back better, social value, etc. For instance, one of the things that we have in Northwest and Central is something called Compete For, which is a portal where the suppliers on frameworks post their opportunities, and then it goes out to the wider SME market, thereby encouraging SMEs that the framework suppliers probably wouldn't necessarily have known of before to have the opportunity to actually apply to do some work with Network Rail. And in fact, I can say this because Alice is from Skanska. They are particularly engaging in posting opportunities, and since April have done so to the tune of a value of 4.9 million, wow, which is amazing just for Northwest and Central region.
Liz, you were making copious notes there. Have you got any examples maybe you can share with us?
Yes, the Minister mentioned TransPennine Route Upgrade Programme.
Yep.
And that's an example of a project that planned to deliver social value from the outset. So they've currently got 21 high quality, or 21 apprentices in high quality apprenticeships on the project, which they anticipate seeing through to completion of apprenticeships. And I've no doubt there will be jobs for those people at the end of the day. They're doing lots of work to provide mentoring to currently unemployed people, and then to provide work placements for those people as a way of helping them get back into the workplace. They're providing science, technology, engineering and maths support to schools and local young people, which is, enhances the curriculum and also raises the possibility of rail as a career for those young people. They're prioritising local spend and spend with small, medium enterprises, exactly as Charlotte identified. And they're enabling local employment, so that the levels of employment around the route are measured. So I think it's about 71% of people currently employed on TRU live within 25 miles of the route, which is very high levels. And now, as we think about the Northumberland line, restoring a railway project, which the Minister also mentioned, there have been commitments made to social value on that project, which everybody, including the contractors, are very, very committed to delivering on. And we're going to measure that, for example, by measuring the local multiplier effect achieved by spend in those areas.
Let's bring Chris into the conversation. Chris, the Chamber of Commerce, I think I'm right in saying you're the biggest in Britain with more than 4,500 members. I'm imagining it's probably quite encouraging hearing some of the examples that our panellists have already shared. What are your thoughts on social value, and what's important to you as a chamber?
I think part of it is, first of all, there's some fantastic examples here, and also our previous speakers, I think, have set out some very clear work over the next few years, so it's important that businesses are part of that. It goes much beyond that. It is the social bit of it, I think, which is so important. But I think before you get to that stage, you've got to engage businesses in this, and it's not just the tier 1, it's tier 2, tier 3, it's everybody in that. And I think when I'm speaking to members about this now, there's been a greater realisation of the benefits of that. And it's not just something a lot of them seeing they've got to do if they want to be part of that tender process. A lot of them are seeing now is it's the right thing to do, and I think that's so important. There's been a shift in this, so I think it's important that we get everybody fully engaged in this, and those benefits don't just impact on business; they impact the community as well. And we've had some good examples. The best one, probably most recently, is the recent terminal upgrade at Manchester Airport, where they went out beforehand and really broke it down into what the impact is going to be of the work they're doing, specifically tendered for it, and produce something there that hasn't just boosted the airport, but the trickle-down effect into the local economy has been absolutely fundamental. So businesses get this, and it's absolutely important that we carry on with this. But we've got to be able to communicate to them and show them that this is the way forward, and these are the benefits if you do it in that way. So I think, looking at what we've got on offer, looking at what's coming up, we're in a pretty good place actually to make the most of that at a time when perhaps, the country as a whole really does need it.
Absolutely. Before I move back to you, Alice, would one of the team just clear the Slido for me, because it's got questions for the Minister, but we didn't do a Q&A with the Minister, and I just want to make sure that we don't miss out on any of our questions for this panel. So perhaps if Hannah or Roy's around, they can take a look at the iPad while I carry on chatting to Alice. How can Rail understand then and address the needs of local stakeholders? I mean, we had Chris touched on that there.
Yeah, I think a key thing to address the needs of local stakeholders is through very early engagement with those stakeholders. Inviting people into the planning process, not only those affected by the work, so local communities, but also contractors as well. And something we really welcomed was the construction playbook in 2020, where social value for contracts more than £5 million was going to be at least 10% of the tender. And since then, we've seen ranges up to 20% of the tenders now given to social value. And that really works for us to deliver social value and have incentive to do it, but also encourages all parties to start that really early engagement and involvement, and ensure that we can bring social value as an opportunity to level up, like you said, Chris.
Is that, Liz, again, you're nodding, is that something that's very important at Network Rail, that early engagement is critical? And also, Charlotte, perhaps you have some thoughts on that too. Do you want to go first, Liz?
Yes, it is. Frankly, we need to do it better. I think there's a recognition about that across the business. Actually, we need to get better. Charlotte can speak to the supply chain early engagement. A piece that I'm really interested in is using the community rail sector to enable early stakeholder engagement, and so to consult better and better understand needs and opportunities in local area. And community rail is prioritised in the William Shapps plan for rail, and it's something I work very closely with Community Rail Network, and we really want to get better at facilitating the sector and working with the sector.
Charlotte, do you want to continue?
Yeah, because when it comes to engaging with the supply chain, I can only agree with Liz. We are not particularly good at it, and it is a chief complaint I get a lot. But we are trying to do better, and I think particularly at the moment, because one of the fallouts from COVID is shortages of materials, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room will be nodding to that one. So one of the things that we're trying to do in North West and Central with the supply chain is look at how can we engage earlier on a project to understand what this design needs are, and maybe look at alternative solutions which are actually available in the marketplace, and be more innovative. And interestingly, we've had something called Pitch Platform a couple of weeks ago, which is like a Dragon-style event day. It was really good fun. And we had 8 SMEs who's never been in Network Rail at all, but they came and they pitched their ideas, one of which was steel braiding. And it became clear very early that had we had the opportunity to go out at design stage, we could probably have alleviated some of the steel issues by using what's actually within the UK marketplace. So that was quite interesting. It just goes to show there's a lot of hidden goodness out there.
Absolutely.
It's just finding it.
It brings us on to Chris with really how construction partners can be brought in to social value, but from your point of view, from a chamber point of view, and the people you work with.
Yeah, we've run events in the past, it's almost like the sort of old style meet the buyer type events, whereby we held one, we ran one for Heathrow a couple of years ago, and very successful. You know, we had about 80, 90 local businesses turn up. It was held at Salford. And, out of that, a fair proportion got contracts, to do work. And it is that communication bit to get the message out to as many people as possible. I think it's interesting, though, what you're saying about that innovative bit. I think there's more of that probably needed now where we are than maybe in the past. So it's not just a case of, like in supply, widgets in such a shape. It's got to be a real sort of collaboration, really.
Absolutely.
And I think the other bit as well is making sure that what those demands and outcomes are of that social value actually also meet what's needed, in the areas where that impact is going to take place. It's no use having 100 apprentices in X, Y, Z if they're actually needed in A, B, C. It's about that match, and you only get that by engaging with local businesses on the ground and other local organisations. So I think the local bit in this is really important. And while it is a big national project that we're talking about, and multi-billion pounds or whatever, I think it's important that we don't lose sight that it's in the local communities where the impact of this will be most felt.
Chris, if we can just stick with you a moment, question from the floor. As an SME, we find visibility of opportunities with TOCs and Tier 1 contractors virtually non-existent. What guidance would you give to see these opportunities? Just wondering if that's happened to any of your members, or you can talk from experience on that.
Yeah, it is, and I've probably not got a direct answer or something specific we can point you at, and sometimes it's a case really of in some cases, us as a Chamber of Commerce being made aware of those opportunities and communicating those to members. But if we don't know what they are, then we really are in trouble, aren't we? You know, that we can't do that. I do think this whole system does need a bit of a shake-up, to be quite honest, because I do think once you get, like I said, you know, tier 2, tier 3, you are really in the long grass then when it comes to actually finding out what these opportunities are. And you're also as well reliant on other people up the food chain. So I do think we need to take a slightly different approach to this. There are all sort of portals out there that people can go on. But again, sometimes businesses come back to me and say, well, we've not really got time to do that. What's a better system for actually doing it? We had the Minister, I think, talk about technology, and certainly Caroline talked about technology. I think there needs to be a bit of a overhaul as to how this system actually works to give those opportunities to people. We're doing our job as best we can at the Chamber. We're relying on organisations that we've got up here to feed us that information, but sometimes it doesn't quite get out there. But, you know, we've got to make it easier for people to access these, because this
Alice,
is
do you want to come in there?
forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Chris is saying, and I think social value as a concept is not new. You know, the Social Value Act of 2012 came in, and we're still learning about it as an industry, but I think the innovation piece is really, really key, and something we have to think about is part of that innovation piece is that social value needs to be very sustainable and needs to be thought about into the future, so that when infrastructure projects inevitably finish and the railway is delivered, that social value can still be maintained. And I think what Chris is saying there about that, the industry reform that's needed, and Charlotte's piece around Compete 4 enables us to start to think about how we can sustain social value, rather than doing dribs and drabs and being really innovative, but actually not thinking more longer term about what's needed in the social value piece.
Do you have any examples, Alice, of measures that maybe can be put in place to ensure that social value continues beyond the end of the project?
Yeah, so something I've seen, obviously working on the High Speed 2 project, is we're really encouraged to think in that way, and we have to post opportunities with Compete 4, and having that in the contract and kind of mandated is High Speed 2's way, I would say, of forward thinking and thinking as the route progresses up the country, how are we going to ensure that this is something that's long-standing, that is happening too, and it becomes much more normal, I think, for us to think like that too.
I'm just keeping an eye on the questions because we're getting a lot of questions, thank you, from the floor. I think, Liz, this might be a good one for you. Do Network Rail have metrics on sustainable targets, social, environmental, that suppliers can target for? Sustainability is often required in bids with no specificity. That's a difficult word to say.
I am so delighted somebody asked that question.
You didn't plant that question, did you, Liz? Just asking. Oh, it's from Samuel, actually. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you, Samuel. We haven't been consistent around Network Rail about this, but we are about to be, because from the 24th of November, there will be a rail social value tool, which Network Rail and other rail partners have developed with RSSB. They've led the programme, we've co-funded it. So there are a huge number of social indicators and monetised values for those indicators within the tool. And within Network Rail, we're now in the process of narrowing that full library of indicators down to a core set of indicators that we can use across our business and through our supply chains. So I'm currently working with Charlotte's colleagues in North West and Central, and also with some contractors in Wales and Western, and also with our national teams to try and identify what that set of indicators will be for Network Rail. So you might well get consulted on that soon, or you might see the impact of that coming through. What that means is by using those consistent indicators, we'll be able to roll data up to project level, to regional levels, and up to Network Rail level. And we will be able to monetize the social outcomes as well, using values that are compliant with UK Treasury Green Book principles. And that's incredibly important, because we need Department for Transport to be comfortable with our valuations and our reporting. Because actually where we would like to move to in due course is a position where DFT and other funders will let us forecast the social value that will be delivered through investments as well alongside the TAG, the transport appraisal guidance that's currently accepted in decision making, because if we can really integrate the valuation of social value, and that means the well-being of people, into rail decision making, then the kind of decisions that are made might be a little bit different from the ones that would be made just using TAG.
Charlotte, we've got a couple of questions coming in from the audience for you. Are you able to tell us more about your pitch platform and the good ideas from composite braiding or others?
Right. So pitch platform is something that has actually been within Network Rail for quite some time, but I've taken it on. I've only been with Network Rail for about a year. I exchanged tanks for trains. So I've come in at a wonderful time where I could really look at developing how we do things, one of which is the pitch platform. And the key to it is, and I would like to urge you all, if you would like to become part of the Northwestern Central supply chain, is to contact me, and most certainly make sure that you go onto the Compete For site as well. It's free to use, and you'll see all pipeline opportunities from that. But with regards to going back to the pitch platform, if you contact me, and I'll be able to add you to our register, and it's really anything at all, because one of the wonderful things that's come out of the difficulties with material shortages due to COVID and various other things, Brexit, you name it, is the opportunity to also do new things and be innovative. And I think it's really important for anyone who sits with a good idea, who may be a little bit afraid to come forward, please don't, because as I said, we had 8 pitches, one of which was steel braiding, but we also had one about flip-up toilet seats. So honestly, there is nothing that you can't come and speak to us about.
Chris Gibbs, Charlotte, is saying, is there any concern that the Compete For platform allows the lead supplier too much control when considering who to partner with as part of any joint venture?
Well, it's really no different to Network Rail when we go through our tenders through the Bravo system, because anybody who wants to tender directly with Network Rail have to go through Bravo. Anyone who wants to tender with one of the framework suppliers go through Compete For. But you have to remember that everything that happens within a Compete For gets reported to me on a monthly basis. And it's all about transparency, and the platform is as transparent as it would be if you tendered anywhere else. So there is no concerns as far as I'm concerned.
Alice, a question that I think would be good if you could answer. Social value and diversity go hand in hand and enable innovation. Looking around the room today, says our person from the audience, what can we do to improve diversity here and in our companies? And I suspect that's a fair point.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, with my job title, this is something we think about a lot. I think a big role for conferences like this is to think about whose voices we're hearing from primarily, making sure that when we invite speakers to these events, we can hear from obviously clients and contractors and chambers of commerce, but also different people with different titles and different perspectives. And we're listening to those voices as well. I think in terms of the makeup of the rail industry, we know there is a long way to go in gender diversity and also ethnic diversity and diversity as a whole too. Some of the programs that we've run on High Speed 2 around this, we have a program for people with disabilities who are graduating from university to come work with us, and they actually bring really amazing very scarce skills, and we spoke about that earlier too. One of the interns on that program has a disability that means he is exceptional at spatial planning and spatial awareness, and we've kept him in our building information and modelling team because he's so good at that. And I think we as an industry need to be aware that when we're talking earlier about increasing the number of people coming into the industry, let's tap up kind of talent pools that we haven't looked at before, or that might offer us a different avenue to fill some of those scarce skills.
I think in many ways, although it's a debate for another day, but the skills shortage gives us an opportunity to try and sort of redress that balance. Chris, how can rail re-establish, create benefit for whole communities rather than just commuters?
I think that's an important part, and I think you know, I think the Minister said we are a rail nation, but everywhere doesn't have a train station, you know, so there is that bit there around making it a lot more accessible. I think there's a couple of things. I think part of this is a very basic thing sometimes about some of the language that gets used. You know, the industry is very good. It's like, you know, anything to do with civil engineering, construction engineering, it's very good at the technical talk. But if you're an outsider looking at some of this stuff, you've not got a clue what people are talking about. You don't know how that benefits you. Yeah. And, you know, I think there's something there around if this gets built, it means this. And it's really breaking it down as to, you know, why it's so important. I live in Wigan, and of course, you know, eventually HS2 services will come there, and it's already begun to start there over what it could actually mean in real terms to people. You know, the engineering's fantastic, but actually, on a day-to-day basis, this is what it means. And I think, again, you know, I know colleagues are probably in a better place to speak about this. It's that community approach as well. You know, how can communities get more involved with where they are and take pride in that really a little bit. But again, you know, they've got to be aware it's there in the first place. Not just to encourage more people to use it, obviously from a sustainability point of view, but to also get that sense of pride back into it, you know, that it is different, you know, and it's something that they can get behind. So I do think there's still a bit of a job to do around that. The people that are engaged in the industry are very engaged and very enthusiastic, and it's brilliant. But, you know, there's still a lot of people there saying, oh, we've not got a train station, so why are we doing it? There's benefits there for them. Yeah. And if you get that social value bit right, and if you get those local employment opportunities right, you may not have a train station.
Yes.
But you could be being paid for working in something in the supply chain that's part of a much bigger picture. And it's about making more people aware about that as well.
It was interesting, as a journalist and interviewer, I was involved in one of the bids for the transformation of Euston, not the company that got it, but it was interesting to see the bid and how, you know, we look at Euston in London, it's disconnected from all sorts of neighbourhoods, and the thought that went into green space and connecting neighbourhoods and not just having, you know, Starbucks and your big companies in, but encouraging independent business and young people to start businesses. That really showed me that rail really is powerful on a massive scale, but also on a small scale. I mean, Liz, 22 million people live within 500 metres of the rail network. That's my favourite stat of the day so far. What does being a good neighbour look like for the entire stretch?
So we've talked about delivering social value and optimising benefits so far. We have to get better at managing and mitigating negative impacts on people. You know, people are disrupted by noise, by poor air quality, by closing off roads and so on to do works. We need to get even better at that. And I had a close shave with somebody with an angle grinder at Motherwell Station this week. You know, we can't assume that negative impacts are being properly managed at the moment. We all need to get better at that. So let's do that as well as delivering the positive social value for people.
Do you agree with that, Alice, that mitigating the negative effects, obviously they're key, aren't they?
Absolutely, and I think what Liz is saying there is we really cannot forget that those negative effects happen despite all of this great stuff that we do. Yeah. You know, when you mentioned around air quality, Skanska released this week that the fuel that we're using on site is not going to be diesel, so that the air quality is better, and obviously the carbon reduction that goes with that too. But I think social value, you know, we can get carried away with the innovation that we spoke about earlier, Chris, and we have to remember that, I mean, in High Speed 2, we could be somebody's neighbour for the next 18 years, and that's a long time to deal with those repercussions too.
Yeah. Take another question from the floor. Alice, what are we doing to develop the skills we need for social value?
Yeah, so the skills around social value is, I don't know if that's a question about how we measure it specifically. I don't know if anyone else has another take on it, but internally we have a social sustainability team that's that's been there on the High Speed 2 project since day one. And like Liz has said, we've adopted some of the measurement expertise there too, not only to be able to then obviously project manage the social value side of things, but put a pound, shilling and pence figure on it. And it was 125 million when we evaluated it in 2019 over the course of 3 years. And I think that it really enables us to target where we should be doing social value and what gives us the best return from a social value perspective too. And like Liz mentioned, could drive some very different procurement decisions in the future as well too.
Really?
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Exactly.
Charlotte, another question. You're very popular from the floor today. Can you give an update on NWNC CP7 plans, or when we will hear?
I was waiting.
That's anonymous.
Yeah, I bet it is. Right, I've been waiting for that one. Okay, so I cannot say very much, so I'll say very little by saying something. I am creating a supplier information SharePoint site, and anybody in the room who would like to become part of that, just email me and I'll add you to the list, upon which we will have all the information that you could need. I would say, however, what we do know at the moment is some of the things you could prepare for, like make sure that you know which risks categories you may need. Look up the social value plan and policies around that. Make sure you understand the Network Rail standards. There's quite a few things you can do already to prepare, but I won't be able to tell you much more than that. We're in the throes of doing the strategy. Now there is going to be, I'm arranging a Northwestern Central supplier networking day on the 17th of February. Now, I don't know if there's going to be anything that I can say there either, but I'm kind of hoping I will be able to. However, the supplier information SharePoint site, I promise I am going to make updates on that as much as I possibly can. And I do not differentiate within Northwestern Central of who you are in the supply chain. You're all there to do a job, so you get the same message at the same time. That's really important. So, yeah, I couldn't really answer that, could I? But I tried.
Well, actually, I think you did answer, and you've just given everybody an invite to email you, so I suspect your inbox is going to be quite full. We are out of time because I don't want to make lunch late, but it's been a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for panel 2. Thank you.